All right, everyone. It is that time, so let's get started. I want to welcome everyone to the January 2021 Rocky Mountain Railroad Club General Program. Tonight we have guest speaker Steve Berry, Railroad and Railfan Magazine, amongst other things of fame. He'll be talking to us tonight about the East Broad Top and some other Eastern steam. But first I'm going to hand it over to, well, one note quick. You'll notice you're all muted. For the duration of the show, we'll keep you muted. If you have a comment or a concern, please just drop it to me in the chat window. After Steve's program gets done, he said that he's perfectly willing to take questions. So at that point, we'll allow you to unmute yourselves, ask a question, allow Steve to respond. So far, this has all worked out very well in the past. Y'all are a very well-behaved group as opposed to some of the people I deal with at work. So I appreciate that deeply. But first, I'm going to hand it over to Dave and Denny to give us news and updates about the club. Let me see here. So take it away, guys.
Yeah, go ahead, Denny.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's January, the start of another year, and the club is doing well, so that's kind of fun. I'm really interested in the program tonight, so I'm delighted that we can start the program with some Eastern steam, and really appreciate Steve being here. The only thing I'd say is that it is into January, and we've got quite a few renewals, but if you haven't, please send a check our way or go on the website. Mike's done a great job, and that works really well. So anyway, looking forward to this and for this year. And Dave, you want to talk about a little bit what's coming up and make our introduction for the evening?
Yeah, I'll do that. Coming up for February, on the 9th of February, we have Stephen Pack will be our presenter, with a variety of stories and pictures from his, we'll say, checkered railroad career. He's done a little of this, a little of that, from steam to the modern edge of passenger stuff. And then I just spoke with John Crisanti today. He's agreed to do our March 9 meeting. He gets out there pretty often and has a really good selection of up-to-date railroad picks. And between now and then, I think he may even get to do some rail fanning in Arizona. Not a whole lot to tell you tonight. I typically, as those of you that have been to one of our live meetings know, we would have people raise their hand and give us little tidbits of things that they know, railroad-wise or tourist railroad-wise, whatnot. But we'll delay some of that because we're not in person. Anyway, a good piece of news from the Colorado Railroad Museum out in Golden. Of the tourist rail operations in this last year, because it's been difficult with the pandemic and whatnot. The Railroad Museum in Golden, Colorado Railroad Museum, is the only one in the country that was able to have a successful season with both Thomas the Tank Engine and the Polar Express. So that's a feather in their cap. Bit of a down note today when this UP Steam crew made their big tour a year ago with the 4014. They got to visit with some of the former steam crew members here and there, and one of them passed away just this morning, Mr. Merrill Transtrom. He had been one of the guys that had run steam back in the day, and he was real tickled to get to see the big boy run again. And I know that Ed Dickens got to visit with him a little bit as they were passing through western Wyoming. With that, I will let Steve tell us about his show. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Steve Berry from New Jersey and the editor of Railfan and Railroad Magazine. Go ahead, Steve.
All right. Yeah. Greetings from New Jersey, home of Railfan and Railroad. I thought I'd give you a little bit of stuff tonight that can sort of tie into Colorado, not necessarily exactly Colorado. start off with some narrow gauge. I know you guys have the corner of the market on narrow gauge pretty much. We're going to start off with the East Broad Top here in Pennsylvania, and then finish off with the Strasburg Railroad, which currently is using as one of its primary locomotives, former Great Western 210 number 90. So we have a little bit of Colorado content in here, albeit half a century later. So if you're all ready for the show, I guess we can just get into it here.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Awesome.
Let me get going here then. And we will do this and this. And all right. As I said, I'm from Railfan Railroad magazine here in New Jersey. And for those not familiar with us, we are a monthly magazine. Here are a few of our covers from a few years ago, actually. You got Colorado narrow gauge there on the upper right. We cover mostly contemporary railroad action in the U.S. and Canada. We do some overseas stuff as well, but mostly contemporary stuff, lots of photos, big news section. But this month, what's currently on the newsstands right now is our January issue, which has something that's probably familiar to a lot of you folks. The Rio Grande Ski Train is our cover story this month. And this is available right now at your local hobby shop or bookstore. Steve Patterson wrote the story. And a few other photographers, including Tyler Eaton, Mel Patrick, Joe McMillan, contributed to the feature as well. So that's out there. Pick it up. Our parent company is White River Productions, based in Buckland, Missouri. We are not centralized at all. I am in New Jersey. My associate editors are in Rochester, New York, and Whitefish, Montana. Our ad department is in Medford, Oregon. Our books department is in Washington State and Aurora. Some of you might know one of our books guys, Chris, who lives out there in Aurora, Chris Lane. We have several commercial publications, including Railfan Railroad, Railroad Model Craftsman, Trains and Railroads of the Past, Passenger Train Journal, and added since this graphic was made, we recently acquired, a year ago now, acquired Rail Pace News Magazine for the Northeast. Narrow Gauge and Short Line Gazette is part of our family now. So got a lot of cool magazines out there. And we have our books division. We have a lot of cool subjects. And these books, if I may say so myself, the books are just excellent. I try not to be too gushing over them, but they're actually extremely good books. High quality, great color. Pick one up. You can, and I'll go full commercial here. Visit shop.whiteriverproductions.com to do all of your gift shopping. So enough of the commercial. What we're going to do now is we're going to head out into Pennsylvania, and we're going to visit the East Broad Top Railroad. The East Broad Top was a 37-mile, more or less, narrow gauge line, 3-foot, that came off the Pennsylvania Railroad at Mount Union, almost dead center of the state, to serve the coal fields. The railroad operated until 1957. When it was shut down, it was purchased by the Kowalczyk Scrapping Company, who never scrapped it. They reopened it in 1960 as a tourist hauler, and it shut down again in 2011, and it's having a rebirth again right now. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Here's the shop complex, the roundhouse turntable, the twin stacks of the Orbisonia, the shop buildings down near the bottom of the frame there, and up in the upper right-hand corner, you see the station. We're going to take a little tour on the railroad first. We're going to start north to south. This is the 4 miles or so that has been in tourist operation from 1960 to 2011. The north end of tourist operations was Colgate Grove. There's a Y here to turn the entire train. And most of the photos you're going to see here are going to be from photo charters. Not much of their regular tourist passenger operations, but photo charters that kind of recreated what was. Here we see Mikado number 15, one of 6 Mikados that still survive on the railroad, coming off the Y at Colgate Grove. 4 of the 6 Mikados actually operated in in tourist service over the 51 years of tourist operation. Here you see a train on the Big Phil near Runk Road, south of the Y. This was a typical EBT consist even back in the regular service days. A Mikado up front, a box car for less than carload traffic behind the locomotive. The string of hoppers would have been a little bit longer in regular service, but the combine on the back is actually pretty authentic because after passenger service was discontinued in the, I guess that was the late 40s, early 50s, the crews decided they liked the way the combines rode better than the cabooses. So they would commandeer a combine for the back of the freights all the time. So this is actually an authentic looking EBT freight train. The EBT did not run very many double headers in regular service. There's not much photographic evidence of that at all. But for photo charters, occasionally we would put two of the locomotives together. And we're still on the Big Phil near Runk Road on the north end of the line here. The 4 EBT Mikados that operated in tourist service were 12, which was a small Mikado, 14 and 15 were medium size, and 17 was a large Mikado. And then there's 2 inoperable ones since the 50s, the 16 and 18, also both large Mikados. And we try to do some of these charters during fall foliage, but I tell you, it's been real hit or miss in recent years. You can never tell exactly when the foliage is. It used to be like clockwork. It used to be Columbus Day weekend. You had peak foliage. That's no longer the case. It really varies now. You can be off by 2 weeks sometimes trying to plan these things. This is McMullen Summit. Private driveway goes over the tracks here. As the name implies, it is the summit of the railroad. And looking off the bridge, here's this is a northbound train. I'm sorry, it's northbound train. And this is the Enyart Road grade crossing. We're getting close to the town of Orbisonia now. And this is actually a shot of a tourist consist here. This is got 2 combines, coach number 8, and then the parlor car Orbisonia on the rear. Mikado number 14 up front. Here's 14 again on a foggy morning with a photo freight coming out of Orbisonia. And 15, taking the train north. That's not coal in the first hopper car. That's, well, it's supposed to be ballast, but it's more like clinkers dumped out of the fire. And a southbound train approaching Orbisonia with 2 locomotives. In addition to the photo charters, the railroad itself ran spectaculars. Originally in the winter, they moved those eventually to the spring and then ultimately to the fall. And they would run some freight consists during the spectaculars. And this double header pretty much indicates it's from one of the spectaculars. Here's number 14 crossing Black Log Creek coming into Orbisonia. Heading south. And again, the mist is just rising first thing in the morning with a southbound train coming into Orbisonia. That brings us to Orbisonia. Here's the depot. Now, the railroad in general calls itself as being in Orbisonia. That's not exactly the case. Orbisonia is the nearest big town. I use the phrase big town pretty loosely here. The railroad is actually located just across the river in Rock Hill Furnace. So the Orbisonia station is actually in Rock Hill Furnace. And the Rock Hill Furnace post office is located in the Orbisonia station in Rock Hill Furnace. The U.S. Post Office sign The railroad saved that when they shut down, and it's been sitting in the station, and we would bring it out every now and then for to put it back on the depot for our photo charters. The shop complex is very much intact. Most of the buildings, if not all of them, are still there from 1957. When you're talking about surviving steam facilities in the United States, the big three would be Chama, Ely, and Orbisonia / Rock Hill Furnace. Here's Mikado 15 coming up past the sand house. Here's the 15 and 17 together, facing north in the shop complex. On this particular day, 17 was not actually under steam. For the photo charters, sometimes we'll put smoke bombs down the stack to simulate an operating locomotive. And this is a night photo we did during one of the railroad's own fall spectaculars. Mikado 15 on the freight train. A photographer with a flash gun and little blue press 25 bulbs talking to the crew. Ironically enough, this shot was actually illuminated with electronic flash and not the flash bulbs. Once again, we're back into the shop complex here. Stub switches are all over the place. The railroad is currently rehabbing the entire yard. Any switch that is a stub switch is remaining a stub switch. And here we see Mikado 14 coming up past the sand house. This is a view from a pile of riprap left over from the coal mining. Looking down on the shop complex with 14 and 15 both under steam here. This pile is now gone. It's just flat land now. You can't get this shot anymore. This is always one of my favorite scenes at East Broadtop. And at the south end of the complex was the old coal loader. The chutes are still there. Water plug is here, as you can see. And here's Mikado 14 heading south. From Orbisonia, the tracks would continue on another 25 miles down to Robertsdale, Pennsylvania, into the coal fields. So the shop complex was actually on the sort of on the north, closer to the north end of the line than the south end. Okay, let's go into the roundhouse here. We're in the roundhouse. Here's 15 and 14. Really a time machine here. Just the way it was. Live steam under the smoke jacks. Pretty impressive place. And here we see 15 coming into the roundhouse after a photo charter for the night. Sort of an out of sequence slide here. Here's number 17 going north out of Orbisonia with a photo charter. The photo charter operators over the years have included historic transport preservation, which is run by oftentimes by John Kraft or Jim Gunning. Laro Photography has done charters here with Pete Laro, and then Carl Franz has run the steam specials here as well. Back to the roundhouse. 3 of the Mikados here. 12 is the smallest Mikado. 17 is one of the large ones, and then it's 16 down the far end there. That's also a large Mikado. And they're all Baldwins. Okay, so that brings us up to the present time. The railroad's been shut down since 2011. Back in November of 2019, we did a photography day. Nothing was steaming. The railroad's been shut down now at this point for 8 years. Nothing was under steam, but they brought 17 out, and with smoke bombs and some actors, we tried to bring back a little bit of the EBT as best as we could. Now, as we were doing this, there were some rumors beginning to swirl about something big potentially happening at the East Broadtop, but no one was really saying. Everybody was pretty tight-lipped about it, but the rumors were there, and things were happening. Here's their doodle bug, the M1. It's a scaled down doodle bug that was built by the railroad based on designs from Brill. And once again, we have the mail pouch there and the post office sign up on the Orbisonia station. Here's the M1 again. And then we did some night photos. And once again, this is the 17, not under steam. A couple of smoke bombs, one down the stack, and then we tossed one into the ash pit to simulate it, the fire being dropped for the night. And 17 getting a backup move, even though it's not going anywhere. Other locomotives in the roundhouse beyond it. In February of 2020, it was announced that the East Broadtop Foundation had purchased the railroad from the Kowalczyks. And they immediately went to work in rehabbing the railroad. In August, they did a bit of a soft grand opening. No steam available, but they did offer train rides with one of their diesels they've acquired over the years. And once again, nothing was under steam, but we had the 12, the M1, and the, I believe that was the 15 lined up at the depot. Here's 12 on the turntable. And I kind of like this one as a black and white. If you look carefully through the open door on the right, you'll see an engine that's torn down. The East Broadtop Foundation immediately went to work on locomotives 14, which had run in tourist service, and 16, which has not run since 1957, tearing them down with hopes of bringing steam back as soon as this year. The 16 is in great shape. It was shopped in 57, then retired. Hasn't been touched since. 14 was getting old. It needs some wheel work, but it's being rehabbed. So in November, we did another photography day there. Once again, with some reenactors. Locomotives were brought out. Smoke bombs were used to bring some life to the locomotives. Number 12, it's named Millie. That's in honor of Mr. Kowalczyk's daughter, who broke a bottle of non-alcoholic beverage, reportedly, over number 12's pilot back in 1960 to bring the railroad back to life. One thing we did on this photo event, though, was we went into the shops. And the shops are completely intact. Everything is there from when the workers left in 1957. It's a belt-driven shop. Over the years, the shop has settled. The shafts have gotten out of line. But the EBT Foundation, along with the Friends of the East Broadtop, have already jacked up the shop buildings, shored up the foundations, and some of the shafts are back in alignment again now and actually functioning. Here you see some of the stuff that was left behind in 1957. And here's 12, and I believe that would be 15 together for a night shot. Once again, all smoke bombs. The stacks in the background, the tall stacks over Orbisonia, are now 30 feet shorter than they were in 2019. They discovered that where a seam was, where they had been extended at one point, the seam had all but rotted through, and the top part was going to come off at any time. So just to be safe, they truncated the stacks, brought them down intentionally before they came down on their own. Did a lot of different scenes with railroaders for the night photo session. But the railroad is coming back to life. The East Broad Top Foundation has done a tremendous job. They've already just about finished restoring the 4.5 miles back up to the Y at Colgate Grove. They've actually pushed a little bit further than that. They're going up to Shirleysburg, the next town up, and they've not officially announced it, but they're making no secret about it. They're going to start pushing south for the first time since 1957, from Rock Hill Furnace, first down to a town called Saltillo, and then on through one of the 2 tunnels that are still on the railroad. Both tunnels will get you to Robertsdale, the south end of the line, but just beyond the first tunnel is a branch line that took off up the mountains, long gone branch line off the EBT. But the foundation owns the right of way, and their plan is to put the rail back on that branch to ultimately give a nice ride up a hillside with nice vistas and everything else. It's going to be really impressive when it's done. Back in the roundhouse again. This is all done as part of a photo event hosted by Lero Photography, Pete Lero and his gang. The guy on the right is David Brightbill. He's been with the railroad in one form or another since I can remember, going way back. Anyhow, little bit of a backstory here. In the 1940s, 1950s, the railroad was overseen by C. Roy Wilburn. He was the vice president of operations of the railroad. And when the railroad shut down in 57, Mr. Wilburn was kept on to oversee the scrapping of the railroad, which never happened. And then in 1960, he was still there, and the Kowalczyks made him the general manager of the new tourist operation. Mr. Wilburn was there until the early 1980s when he passed away. Anyhow, David Brightbill on the right-hand side there, for the photo event, he put on Mr. Wilburn's trademark hat and coat and posed for photos. So he had the boss man actually back out for photos. It was really, really a nice tribute to Roy Wilburn. The guy on the right is Dave Dimitrovich. He is the CMO of the East Broad Top now. He used to work for Strasburg. He'll be overseeing the rebuilds of the 14 and 16 and whatever else they decide to do next. And here's Dave again, looking like doing his best Roy Wilburn scowl. And we did some other stuff in the roundhouse while we had the chance to. Jenny here, she does a lot of photography events that Pete does, posing as for various things. If you go through the old shop buildings, you'll find some pretty cool stuff. Some seal lac, whatever that is. It's durable, according to the label. And the parts supply. And the funny thing, the interesting thing is, as they've been working on the 14 and the 16, as they find they need parts, they've walked right into the old stores building and pulled the part that's been sitting there since 1957 off the shelf and put it on the engine. This is the main boiler area of the shop complex. The boiler is down at the far end of the building here. Guys shoveling coal into the boiler. You can see some of the belt system here. Little scene we set up as part of the photo event. And working in the shop complex. And break time for the shop workers. Guy on the left is holding the Life magazine. The guy on the right is holding a copy of Railroad magazine. So that's the East Broad Top where things stand right now. They're going like gangbusters on it, working their way south and north at this point, and they're hoping to have steam going south sometime late next year. It'd be pretty impressive. We're going to move now across the state, not very far, just a couple of hours east, to Strasburg, Pennsylvania, to the Strasburg Railroad, and we're going to take a look at some of the different freight and photo opportunities they've had over the years. This was on the 80th anniversary of the Broadway Limited. They brought the Pennsylvania Special out of the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania behind 442 number 7002, took it down to Lemon Place Junction where Strasburg interchanges with what is now Amtrak's Harrisburg line, formerly the Pennsylvania Railroad's main line. And the current Broadway Limited and the original Pennsylvania Special had a side-by-side meet on this day. I think this was the 80th anniversary. Strasburg still has a pretty busy freight business. And here we see 060 number 31, originally Canadian National 7312, bringing a mixed train in from the interchange. Freight business has boomed on the Strasburg. They move a lot of freight now. They weren't doing freight by steam for quite a while. It's gotten so busy now, though. They got to, and they try to serve their customers on demand, so they use a diesel now for the freight operation. But this is when 31 was bringing in some freight cars. That's tobacco you see planted in the fields there. 1223, a Pennsylvania Railroad 440 operated at Strasburg for a while. It normally lives across the street in the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. This was a little photo freight train the railroad itself put together back in the 1980s before they retired the two Pennsylvania locomotives. Need to plow snow? You bring out the snow plow. Here's a steam-powered snow plow, ex-Norfolk and Western 480-475, pushing the plow along the right-of-way. Strasburg is a year-round operation for the most part, and so snow removal is part of their standard things they do in the wintertime. This was a photo freight put together by, I believe, the Baltimore chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. It's a Maryland and Pennsylvania mixed train. Canadian National 260 number 89 has been relettered Maryland and Pennsylvania, although you can't really tell from here. There's a Maryland and Pennsylvania box car, two of them actually, at the back end, along with a ma and pa coach on the very end. So you got a pretty decent ma and pa consist here. This shot here is no longer doable. This whole area has grown up now with a corn maze and Amish village and all kinds of interesting stuff. I don't say too much about it because it's pretty ugly. Canadian National 89, this 260. And let me tell you, one of my favorite dual-purpose locomotives ever built are the CN Moguls. They're just so well proportioned. Here we see 89 taking a freight train east during a photo charter through beautiful Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Here's 89 again with the freight train. 89 is their the smallest of the three locomotives currently in service. It will do their off-season trains quite a bit, while the two bigger engines, which you'll see a little bit later on, handle the larger summer trains. As I said, we're in the middle of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. This is all Amish country, and these two Amish boys walked up to see what all of us were doing, taking pictures, and we said, "Hey, we want to pose for the shot," and they agreed. So here you see a train approaching Carpenter's Crossing. Our photo charters run from sunrise to sunset. This is a sunset shot. The locomotive seen here is Norfolk and Western 480-475. And here it is, Great Western number 90 from Colorado. Unfortunately, we don't have any sugar beet cars in Pennsylvania to give it a real authentic consist behind it. But this is one of Strasburg's 2 workhorses. It runs almost year round, every day in the summertime, deep into the wintertime. With the pumpkin trains and the Santa trains, it stays busy pretty much all year round. This is a sunrise shot, mixed train. And here's the 475. And I believe that's a Model A. Don't quote me on that. Pickup truck, it's pacing. Going through Groundhog Cut. As I said, we go from sunrise to sunset. Here's the setting sun shining through the window of the coach on the mixed train. Here's the 475 during a photo charter. This shelter here is Groff's Grove. It's the online picnic grove of the on the railroad. And because 475 is a Norfolk and Western locomotive, I had a vinyl sign made up for Blacksburg, Virginia. And we just unrolled the sign and tacked it over the Groff's Grove sign on the shelter. So we had a N&W locomotive visiting Blacksburg. Pete Laro put together a charter that was all Canadian national. This is pretty striking because 2 of the locomotives are CN heritage. 060 7312, also known as Strasburg 31, which is currently out of service, was used along with CN Mogul 89, which you see here is numbered 911. When Pete was putting the charter together, he had a couple of shots planned that was going to use the Model A truck that you saw earlier. And the Strasburg's president, Lynn Modinger, said, well, no, you can't do that because when the Model A's were around, 89 wasn't numbered 89. It was numbered 911. It's its original number. So when you're faced with that, you have to either A, find a more modern vehicle, or B, renumber the engine. Well, obviously, you're going to renumber the engine. That's the best way to do it. So here's the 911 passing the 7312 at the Strasburg shop. This was really a cool day, though. It really brought back, really looked like Southern Ontario, Canadian National. It was quite striking. Here we see the 911, aka the 89, going across Byler's Crossing. And at night, that night in the shop, it was pretty cool. 2 CN locomotives together with their fires dropped, steaming away, ready for bed. Another one of our early morning charters, sunrise over Lancaster County. That's Norfolk and Western 475 again. But you can see here, it's numbered 382. Okay, why 382? 382 was the 480 that O. Winston Link did a lot of photo work with in daytime on the Abington branch down in Virginia. So Pete Laro arranged to have locomotive numbered 382. We've done some wintertime charters. Here's the 89 and the 475 together in a blizzard. And this is the area you saw earlier. I said had been growing up now. The shot you saw before, the Ma and Pa mixed train, was from the other side of the tracks, but from roughly the same area. And but you can see the tents and the barns and everything else that have popped up in the fields on both sides of the railroad here. I've done some night photo work there because they run their holiday trains, their Santa Claus trains, after dark in November and December. It's a great chance to get out and do some night photography work with steam. Here we see the 475. And once again, the 475, it's going over what is known as the Pumpkinville Turnpike. Yes, that is the Pumpkinville Turnpike going under the railroad here. Very, very busy road, as you can imagine, being it's a turnpike. Along the railroad is at Carpenter's Crossing is the oldest cemetery in Lancaster County. Here we see the 89 with a mixed train with a cemetery in the foreground. Another one of our charters. We have I don't know my car models that well, but here we see the soldier waiting for the train to go by. This is not a staged shot. This is Shelley Hall. She works for the Strasburg in the shop area, and she was cleaning out the smoke box this day. And she's actually at work doing her job when this photo was taken. Here we see the 475, aka the 382, on a fall charter. Pumpkins in the field. I will confess, the pumpkins were not all in the photo before the photo run by. We went through the field and gathered up the best pumpkins and sort of put them out in the foreground to make it look good. And the 382 at night at the Strasburg shop. Strasburg itself ran this mixed train for an armed services day. They used Canadian National 89. Interestingly enough, they had a Canadian locomotive lettered for the United States Army Transportation Corps. So that was interesting. But here we see it crossing over the Pumpkinville Turnpike. Sunrise doubleheader. A little bit of frost on the ground. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a big fan of double headers of locomotives that would not have been in service together in real life. But something like this, where you have nice glinty light, you can't really tell what railroad they're from. This looks pretty cool, actually. And setting sun, train going into Strasburg at the end of the day, the 475 leading. Nighttime shot back up at the cemetery at Carpenter's Crossing. Number 90 doing the honors. And here's the 90 coming out past the yard limit sign, leaving Lemon Place Junction on the east end of the railroad. The railroad itself is about 4 miles long from Strasburg to the junction. And as I said, they haul freight. And on this particular day I was out there, they had a couple of freight cars that had to come in. They had some time available before they had to go pick them up. So they put a coach on the train and sold tickets for a mixed train right on the spot. So people could actually ride this mixed train with modern cars back into Strasburg from the interchange. 89 doing the honors. Here's J Tower, also known as Limo Tower. It used to sit in Lemoyne, Pennsylvania on the Pennsylvania Railroad. It was purchased by the Lancaster chapter NRHS and moved to the Strasburg. The chapter has since donated the structure to the Strasburg, but it makes a really nice photo prop at the west end of the station complex in Strasburg. Amazingly enough, Norfolk and Western 611, the big 484, mainline steam engine, visited Strasburg October 2019, I believe it was. Here you see the 611 speeding along on the road to paradise. Here we see it pulling a short freight train. Now this is actually authentic. Something the 611 would have done at some point in regular service in all likelihood. When the big J-class locomotives were bumped off of the passenger assignments, some of them actually did wind up, believe it or not, in local branch line service. So a J pulling a short freight train is actually historically correct, albeit for a very short period of time back in regular service days. This is from my drone looking down on the 611 with its short freight train. And here we see the 475, now number 382 once again, with a freight train. While 611 was there, they had a all Norfolk and Western day for photographers, featuring the 611 and the 475, 382. Back to a doubleheader. Here's 89 leading the 475, speeding along again. This is on a Carl Franz charter. As I said, double headers and triple headers aren't really my cup of tea with mismatched engines, but Carl asked me to run the trip because I know the railroad fairly well. So I arranged all the photo run-bys and everything. So here you see 89, 475, and 90 together on a triple header. Once again, as seen from my drone. Here's the 475 at night again. Once again at Christmas time. So this past year, 2020, a year that shall live in infamy, back in October, Strasburg wanted to celebrate the 60th anniversary of steam coming to the railroad. Now, this is not a steam engine, obviously, but as part of the celebration, the day before the steam celebration, they recreated the earliest days of the Strasburg Railroad. When the railroad became a tourist hauler in 1958, it originally used this little Plymouth #1 and a couple of coaches. And that's how it started out as a tourist hauler. Here we see our 1960s tourists, including carrying an Argus C3 camera, waving to the train as it goes by at Ranks Crossing. The Strasburg is actually the oldest incorporated railroad in the United States. It was actually founded in 1832. It shut down as a regular operator in the late 1950s and was almost immediately reincarnated as a tourist hauler. So here we see our original Strasburg passenger train at Carpenter's Crossing. The fence on the hillside on the left-hand side there, that's the cemetery up there on the hill. Back to J Tower. Here's number 90. They've added a Pennsylvania Railroad position light signal to the scene. And number 90 back in the shop area at the conclusion of the first day of the celebration. And once again, this is something I made a little bit of, I turned into a black and white. Next morning, here's number 90 with the rising sun. You don't get much sleep on these charters sometimes. That night photo session the night before ran until midnight. We were back on the train at 6:30 to be in position for the sunrise. Here's 89. It was also running during the steam celebration with a freight train crossing over Pumpkinville Turnpike. I love those CN 260s. Gosh, they're good-looking engines. For the celebration, number 90 was put back into its 1980s paint scheme. Yellow striping on the tender, yellow striping under the cab window, and the famous Strasburg Railroad egg on the tender, which went out of style in the 1980s. The railroad got rid of the egg and replaced it with more traditional railroad lettering. But the egg, while derided back in the day by purists, has now become a bit of a cult thing. It was so bad it's now become cool. So an egg charter was perfectly great. Here we see a meet with Amtrak up at Lemon Place Junction, 89, 90, and an Amtrak Harrisburg service train going by. And here's 90 and 89. Here's Groff's Grove. You can see the Groff sign there. That's what I put the Blacksburg sign over for that night photo you saw a little bit earlier. Our 1960s passengers for the throwback weekend, getting their shots of 89 and 90. Day 3, another sunrise. This time 90 was pulling a 10-car passenger train. This is straight out of Strasburg 1980s. The East Strasburg station hasn't changed all that much in the intervening years. And here we have 90 with the egg logo on the tender, all the striping. This was a really cool shot because it really harkened back to the 1980s. And then some more recent photos. Just this past Christmas season, I lugged all my photo gear, light gear, into Groff's and lit up 90 on one of the Santa Claus trains. And here is 90 approaching Esbenshade Crossing, almost back into Strasburg. Uh, 90 crossing over Pumpkinville Turnpike. The paint scheme on 90 now is inspired by the last Great Western scheme it wore prior to the diamond scheme. I believe the silver numbers, it would have said Great Western under the cab window, and the tender was pretty much black on that original paint scheme. There wasn't really much to look at. And here's 89. Busy railroad in the Christmas time. You know, this is the previous shot and this shot were the same night. 2 steam engines operating with, well, this year wasn't train loads of passengers because of social distancing, but normally they'd be all sold out trains. And here's 90 dashing through the snow. So what's going to happen next is we're going to go across the river into New Jersey and see one of 90's old stablemates. A Great Western 280 number 60 is running on the Black River and Western Railroad now. And the Black River and Western has chosen to retain the diamond under the cab window that the 60 wore in its Great Western days. The railroad used to operate a mixed train once a year, and back in the early 1990s, on mixed train day, we had a snowstorm. That was kind of cool. Here's 60 ready to cross over the Raritan River. And we're following the Black River and Western from east to west here. The previous shot was near Three Bridges, New Jersey. This is crossing the Raritan River. This part of the railroad is not normally used for passenger operation. Now we're into Flemington, and 60 you can see has the silver smoke box now. That's the old Jersey Central Depot, now a bank on the left-hand side there, nicely restored. And here we are coming into downtown Flemington, New Jersey. And crossing over Copper Hill Viaduct. The Black River and Western is not the most scenic railroad in the world. If you like high tension lines, it's your railroad. It's great for that. But the scenic highlight of the railroad is the abandoned concrete plant, believe it or not. And this is a shot from back in the abandoned concrete plant, which now has signs all over the place about, do not enter. You're risking your life due to toxic chemicals and falling debris and all kind of other stuff. Here's 60 at the shop area in Ringgoes, New Jersey. What you see in the sky there is raindrops coming down. And to finish off the program, we're going to head back over to Strasburg. Pete Laro put together a charter with number 90, and he put it back into its Great Western paint scheme that we all know and love, the diamond scheme that it had in the 1960s. Now, back then, 90 had the extended smoke box, which Strasburg has since removed, so it's not quite authentic. And the domes have been reconfigured a little bit, but it really got the point across that it was a nice representation of the old paint scheme. And here you see it here, that the striping on the tender, the diamond under the cab window, the white wall tires, the graphite smoke box. 90 really looked good for this charter. Here you see it crossing over the Pumpkinville Turnpike. The striping on the running boards and the tender is actually just tape. And the diamond under the cab window is a magnet. I think the tender lettering was actually vinyl we stuck on there. There's a farm along the railroad with a barn, and the silo's been converted into an overlook. So this is from the top of the silo. And going past the cemetery at Carpenter's. And back at the Strasburg shop. This is inside the shop. It actually, we actually had a rainstorm during the day, right about midday during our lunch break. So we put the engine in the shop, and we could get photos inside while it rained outside. And we're back into the shop at the end of the day. The solid pilot is, to get it back to the way the Great Western had it, the solid pilot you see here is actually roofing tar paper secured to the pipe pilot that's normally on the front of 90. And Pete had made up number board glass with the proper font for the Great Western for the charter. And at the end of the day, here's Pete taking the his custom glass out of the 90 to replace it with the Strasburg's font for 90. So that's going to wrap it up for me here. Most of the stuff you saw here is on my website, which is www.railroadphotographer.com. You'll see a lot of train stuff there, plus my other interests, which include lighthouses, neon, other Americana. Good stuff there. I also do a Wednesday night slideshow on Facebook Live. And I'm actually doing one tomorrow night, Wednesday night slides every other week. Tomorrow night, I'm showing the second half of my favorite photos from 2020, which includes trains, includes other stuff too, lighthouses, Americana, things I've seen along the road. It's not all trains, but it's mostly trains. My Facebook profile is public. The shortcut to it is www.facebook.com/steve.barry.33. That gets you to my profile, or you can just send me a friend request. That works too. And that will start tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern, 6:30 Mountain Time. So if you want to stop by, feel free to do so. That is going to wrap it up for me. So I guess if you want to, we can now do some questions.
Sure. Sounds good, Steve. All right. So if anybody's got any questions, I see a few of you unmuting right away. So take it away, folks.
Question, when the pictures you took of the EBT that you showed us, they must have been from 2010 or before, except for the ones this year.
All the other stuff was from 2011, was roughly from 2006 to 2011.
Is that a lot of Kodachrome that I see behind you?
Kodachrome there. This is all, that's all slides. And there are 3 more shelves just like it across the room, full of slides. And then there's also boxes of slides here. There's a pile of trays right here you can't see. And yeah, Kodachrome slides there. And yeah, the room is pretty much slides. Anybody else out there?
I think somebody had given us corrections on the vehicles. I think they said it was a Model A car and a Model T truck.
That could be right. Okay.
Yeah. There was a nice Cadillac in there somewhere too.
There was, yes.
Some great cars in there. That was great. I was amazed by the how they were called a reenactment of Engine 90 with the Great Western paint scheme and all. So did a great job with that.
Yeah, the only difference was the biggest difference was the lack of the extended smoke box, which Strasburg took off.
You know, I was curious about that smoke box, and I called Lynn Modinger a couple days ago because I said, hey, this might come up, and I wanted to know why they took it off. And he said when it came in the mid 60s, it still had the long box. And sometime in the 80s, they said that since it was using different coal back there at Strasburg than what it had here, they were finding that it wasn't steaming quite as well, and the flues were getting clogged and that type of stuff. So then they converted it to the master mechanic smoke box, and they cut a little flack from the fans, but then again, the thing needs to be able to run and be easy to run.
Yeah, I think it was burning lignite back there in Colorado, and we have better coal here. So
yeah, you said it was a different kind of coal, and it just seemed to steam differently for sure.
Yeah.
I would guess you guys probably have some good coal back there.
Tell us a bit about the historical foundation and where they're from. Obviously, they've got money.
Yes, the East Broad Top Foundation is primarily driven by 3 people who are giants in rail preservation. One of them is Henry Posner III, owner of Iowa Interstate. He brought the Chinese QJs to the United States several years ago. He has railroads in Guatemala and all over the place. He's one of the principals. The second principal is Bennett Levin. Bennett owns the Pennsylvania Railroad E8s that were being used for Army Navy games and things like that for the last 15 or 20 years or so. Bennett is a huge Pennsy fan. He owns the observation car that carried the body of Robert Kennedy in the funeral train, among other Pennsy cars. And before the recent changes at Norfolk Southern, Bennett was the go-to guy for an excursion because he had the connections at Norfolk Southern. If you wanted to do a charter with over NS tracks, you called up Bennett, chartered his train, and he made all the arrangements, and you wound up running over Norfolk Southern. The third principal in the foundation is Wick Moorman, who was the CEO of Norfolk Southern during the time that the heritage units were brought out, when the 611 was restored. Wick is also a huge Pennsy fan. So he jumped on the East Broad Top project as well. Nick Kowalczyk, the scrap company owner, he wanted to sell the railroad intact. His family, he had retired. His family, his kids were not interested in the railroad too much. They were more worried about the liability with the railroad. So they shut it down in 2011. But the Kowalczyks always wanted to sell the railroad intact and were waiting for the right buyer. And when the foundation came along, Nick had the Kowalczyks had a list of conditions they would like met for the future of the railroad. The foundation said, "Yeah, great, sounds good to us. We'll take it," and bought the railroad.
Somebody had
Fantastic.
written a question there about the Strasburg, and has it been used in much motion pictures?
Motion pictures, no,
Okay.
not really.
It
There's
just
been a
looks
couple-
camera ready was the comment.
It is, and they are ready, and they've done a couple of films for the Smithsonian with their historic cars, but they haven't done any, as far as I know, they haven't done any movie work on the railroad itself.
Maybe that'll loosen up when the pandemic fades.
All the reenactments are really great and authentic. It's really neat to see that. Now, Strasburg was where Engine 20 was restored, right?
Yes,
Right.
it is. Yeah, Strasburg is one of the finest steam shops in the country, and 20 came here for much of its work, and I guess it's back out there again now.
It's running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a
In fact, Strasburg did
Colorado day.
all the wheel work for the 4014 as well.
Yeah.
Its drivers came to Strasburg for work.
Oh, okay.
Are there any turntables on the East Broad Top?
There's a turntable in Rock Hill Furnace. There's a Y in Rock Hill Furnace. There's a Y at the Picnic Grove, so they can turn anything. In fact, the East Broad Top was one of the few tourist railroads that runs engine first all the time, because they can turn at both ends, not counting the ones that are loops. But they can run their engine north, turn it on the Y, run the whole train south, turn it on the Y, and continue on. So Strasburg runs their trains tender first out to Lemon Place Junction. They run around the train there and then come back boiler first.
Hmm.
Strasburg.
How many miles is it, East Broad Top, that they run there?
The tourist operation ran 4 miles, 4.5 maybe.
Okay.
They've cleared track north. They're working on clearing track north up to Shirleysburg. Not sure why. There's nothing up there because the railroad actually misses the town by 1/4 mile. But they're working on going north. They don't own, the foundation doesn't own the far north end of the railroad. That was sold off separately many years ago to a group called the East Broad Top Preservation Society. And they haven't done anything at all. Time will tell if the foundation will get their hands on the north end at some point or not. There is a standard gauge 060, East Broad Top 060, still in the engine house in Mount Union.
Wasn't there 2 of them there, Steve?
There were 2. The other one's on the Whitewater Valley out in Indiana.
Okay, all right.
And they're hoping to push south. They've started clearing track. They're hoping to push south as far as Saltillo, which is about another 6 miles below Orbisonia. They're hoping to be down there by the end of 2021. The big obstacle there is the trestle at Pogue. It's a steel trestle, but they had 2 engineers look at it, and both agree that the steel is in great shape. The deck is shot. It needs to be all redecked with fresh ties and wood. And the concrete on the abutments at each end needs a little bit of work. But overall, the Pogue trestle is pretty sound. So they think they can cross that pretty easily and get down to the town of Saltillo end of this year, which would be phenomenal. Hasn't been a train down there since '57.
Hey, so track mileage question with what they're doing north and south, and then potentially that rebuilding of the branch. How many miles would that give them?
25 maybe.
Oh, wow. That's a big jump.
Yeah. And there's 2 tunnels. They're both collapsed. The first tunnel won't cost as much as the second tunnel to reopen. So that's why they're going for this branch that's located between the 2 tunnels. They can get to the first tunnel, get to that branch, go up the mountain. Nice scenic vistas, be a nice ride.
That's probably one place where they can't turn the engine up there.
It is. They'll probably have to put a Y in somewhere. They'll figure it out. The foundation is phenomenal. They bought the old. Now the Rock Hill Furnace post office was in the station. They moved it to a little brick building across the street adjacent to the railroad. And by the way, the Rock Hill Trolley Museum is located right across the street there as well. They run on part of the old Shade Gap branch. But anyhow, the post office consolidated and closed the Rock Hill Furnace post office, the new one. And the railroad bought that. They're going to turn that into a cafe to generate a little bit of money. And they got other plants or other buildings that are coming up for sale near the railroad in Rock Hill Furnace that they're going to be looking to repurpose for other things.
I was wondering about the roundhouse and the shops on the East Broad Top. How many bays is that roundhouse? And I think you said everything was still intact. I was like,
yeah, there's
really neat.
There's 8 bays or 9 bays. Mikado's occupies 6 of those. The M1 occupies another one. I can't remember if there's another bay in the main area or not. But then there's another bay off to the north side, still attached to the roundhouse, but sealed off with a wall. And what they have done is they've taken that bay, put down a concrete floor, and they are using that now as their for things they need to do in a confined space, asbestos removal, things like that. So that's become their main area for rebuilding these locomotives.
I see.
They also have room in their shop buildings to store their coaches. Most of the coaches stay indoors because the shops have adequate room in them. So they've got some big plans there.
Yeah. It sure is neat to see the line shafts running and all that.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. I was surprised to see those back running again so soon. They had I'd seen them running back in like 1980, one of my first visits out there. Excuse me. But then they got into some disrepair. The shop settled and the shafts got out of line. But when I was out there again this past November, they had the boiler on compressed air, and they were running the main shaft and one of the side shafts, and they're hoping to get more of them in service as time goes on.
So
I was out there for the opening weekend, and yeah, they showed us all that stuff working again.
Does it run on a steam engine?
They did originally. They ran them on steam originally. Like I said, they were running them on compressed air now.
But they want to restore it. They said they want to restore it, the boilers.
Yeah.
We have dreams of doing the same up in Como.
The difference between East Broad Top and say the 2 major tourist lines in Colorado in terms of, I guess, potential that I see is not a real problem, but the fact is there's very few places to stay around Orbisonia. You have to go a fair distance to get a hotel or a motel.
You do. That is
so there isn't Alamosa or places nearby.
Correct. Nearest place is Huntington up on the Pennsy main line,
and then Altoona.
Yeah, Huntington's 20 miles away.
Yeah,
so that's the closest.
How do the size of the EBT mics compare with the Denver and Rio Grande Western mics?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Maybe somebody else knows the answer to that. I believe the biggest EBT mics, the 16, 17, and 18 might be comparable to the K37s, maybe?
I think they're actually a little bigger.
Are they? Okay.
As far as weight and tractive effort, I believe they're a little bigger than the 37s.
Okay.
Speaking of the 37s, I was out in Colorado in 2019. There's no running 37s right now. Is there?
No, there is.
There is?
Yeah, the 493 is running and the 491.
And that would be on Cumbres and Toltec, or?
No, 93's at Durango. They repowered that with oil fire.
Oh, that's the one they redid with oil.
And then the 91 runs at the Colorado Railroad Museum.
Okay, but they don't have. There's the Cumbres and Toltec doesn't have a 37.
Their 97 is parked right now. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it'll probably come back someday, but I think the story is they haven't had a burning need for it, so they've been running with the 480s mostly.
Yeah.
They were going to do, this was also what do you say? It was 60th anniversary for Strasburg. This was the 50th anniversary year. I still talk like we're in 2020 because 2020 just doesn't end. But they were going to do a lot of special things on the Cumberson Toltec this year.
Yep.
They're going to have their, pre-1900 trains because they had the 315 out and the 168. They've got, I believe, 3 passenger cars of the old ones restored and 2 more in the works. So it's not going to be long before they have 5 really old passenger cars up and running. And boy, they look really nice.
You're including the one that was restored by the museum in Colorado Springs for them, the sleeper?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And then the pay car is coming after that. They're working on that, which originally I believe had been a Horton car, a chair car, which was a special kind of chair. It's kind of like barber chairs that could rotate around, but I don't think it survived as a Horton chair car very long. I think Stothy told me that it had been a work train car for a lot of its life.
Well, Steve, I would look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future a bit as maybe some of this operation comes back. I'm so glad we got contact. So
yeah, you all might not remember, but I actually wrote the article for Railfan for the Rocky Club's 50th anniversary celebration.
That's been like 32 or 33 years now.
That was back in '88, wasn't it?
Wow, cool.
Yeah, or '86. Yeah. Oh, but yeah, I was out there and rode the all the trips you guys did for the 50th, which was a heck of a lot of fun. The Challenger and Georgetown Loop and down to out to Lehman on the Old Rock. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yep. Lyman, we say.
Lyman.
Just like it's funny, those regional pronunciations. We have a street called Raritan, but
yeah,
depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
Galapagos.
It's freaking invisible.
That's right. Well, good to see a lot of our members turn out. I don't know. Do we have John from Australia with us today?
He was here. I think he left for
Martin and Durango and.
Yes, I'm here.
There he is.
There you go.
Steve, he gets the long distance award almost every month.
Well, we have an article in Railfan we're working on right now for the March issue, 14 pages written by our boss, Kevin Udaly, on the Pilbara and the mining operations there.
Oh.
Well, I've worked on that railroad professionally as an engineer, railroad rolling stock engineer.
Okay.
And but I've very much enjoyed the program today. I've visited the East Broadtop twice, and I've been to the Strasburg 3 times over the last 50 years. And I don't know now with the pandemic whether I'll get there again. But anyway, it's been
control keys turn.
We'll things will be normal again by late summer. I'm pretty sure.
I hope so.
We hope so.
We all hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Steve. You gonna try to have winter rail this coming fall?
Well, Winter Rail is out in Corvallis, Oregon. That's Vic Neves. And I just saw an email from Vic. They're going to attempt to show last year's Winter Rail in March this year, March 21st, I think the date was. And then this year's Winter Rail on the following day, a Saturday and Sunday doubleheader. But that's in March in Oregon, and I'm skeptical. I'm hoping that we'll get summer rail in Marion, Ohio, off the ground this year in August. Fingers crossed on that one. But winter rail might get postponed again to the summer or fall, I'm hearing, but we'll see.
All right. Well, thanks for staying up late for us, Steve.
No problem at all.
Come up.
I was going to say one other thing. Pat sent me a note while we were during the program. He apparently has an update from Como. So if anybody wants an update from Como, stick around for a minute. Steve, thank you for the show. We very much appreciate you doing this. Fantastic photography.
My pleasure.
Glad very much, Steve. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks very much. By the way, when I had one more question about the night setup. Do you have like a whole lot of what sort of equipment do you set up for those night shots?
The night shots you saw of the moving trains that I took, they were done with 3 or 4 studio strobes. They're Alien Bees made by Paul Buff in Nashville. They're the standard studio strobes. But I use those. They come with their own battery packs, so that you don't have to run wires and stuff like that. Now just a matter of hauling them to the spot and setting them up. People say, well, they must be really, really bright to do what they do. Well, no, not really. The secret is actually the high ISOs of the cameras these days. You can shoot an ISO 1600. And I tell people, back in the day, Winston Link would use 30 or 50 flash bulbs.
Yeah.
And the total output of all 4 of my strobes, total output, is less than 2 of Link's bulbs.
But he had film that was maybe ASA 100.
ASA 12. 12. He had 12.
12. He had 12. Oh, because we just
Yeah, I'm about 15 stops faster than him now, so
yeah.
I can use less light.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks again, Steve, so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to do it.
Good. I don't know if you want to stay on or not, but Nathan, did you say that you got some Como report?
Well, it looked like Pat dropped off.
Yeah.
No, he's here.
Couple of quick things. Of course, the big news was we got our article in Trains Magazine in the January issue that just came out. I still haven't got it at the store yet, but I did get a print of it, sent email. So that's really cool. It has a picture of Kate on the pit that we restored. So that was cool. And we've released our work schedule for the summer. We're going to be adding a lot more of tracks in the yard, it looks like, and getting more of these switches together. So we've got a lot of switch parts to build and such. So and then we'll see about starting to extend down the line towards the Denver, Maine.
Yeah.
So check it out on the website, the Denver South Park Pacific Historical Society or South Park Rail, for any other details. If you want to check out the dates, sign up for any of that, whatever. So, but that was the latest so far.
Yeah.
I would also like, oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, if the pandemic allows for it, I mean, we've been trying to do at least one Rocky Club event with the Como folks the last few summers. We'll just have to play that by ear.
Yeah. Everything is planned to run Kate on Railroad Day. And I'm pretty sure that will include the first run with the drumhead for the club only.
And that's in August.
And that's on, the 3rd week in August, 19th or 20th, I think it is.
Okay.
And what else? We got the water tanks slowly moving ahead. So.
Oh yeah, rebuilding. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Looks like.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate the update. So if folks are interested in volunteering some time this summer, sounds like the schedule's up. The other thing I wanted to remind folks of is that our annual grant program will be kicking off after the board meeting next week. For those who don't know, for the last few years, our charitable arm, the Rocky Mountain Railroad Historical Foundation, gives away 5 up to $1,000 mini grants to railroad preservation projects every year. So if you are involved with some project that could use a little boost for funding this summer, be sure to check on our website and the newsletter for details. Applications, as usual, will probably be due end of April. So just a reminder for those. I mean, I've never met a historical society that couldn't use some cash, so it pretty much applies to all of you.
And on the other side of that grant program, we will take donations to help us fund that grant program. If anybody's looking for a place to park some cash, like Kirk would like to do that, wouldn't you?
And tax deductible.
That's right.
Yep.
Yep. Do we have anybody that has an update on the Rocky Mountain trips that are supposed to run between Denver and Moab? Specifically, where are they coming out of Denver and how are they going to get to Moab when it's not on the main?
Yeah, we still haven't heard that. We think they're going to come from Denver Union Station. There seems to be a new freight customer on the Cane Creek branch down near Moab. We don't know if Rocky Mountaineer intends to unload the passengers down there or if they would do it more up on the main line and use a bus. We just haven't heard that yet. I think probably the best source of information is to watch the Rocky Mountaineers website, but I don't think they've done any updates in the last week or two.
No, I've been watching that. Are they still hauling radioactive material out on the branch?
I think so, and I can't remember what the customer is that just started. It's just in the last week or two. I saw a picture posted, actually I think on our Facebook page for the club just in the last few days. John Shine had said that there was a new customer. So I think they typically ran the Potash Local on Saturdays, and I think this new customer gets pickup or deliveries on Friday. So there may be actually 2 days a week now on the Cane Creek branch. So somewhat surprising.
All right.
Okay. You good, Denny? Shall we wrap this up for the evening? Thank you all for attending. We very much appreciate it.
Come back
for those of you
Tuesday of each month.
I say we'll be back in February, Dave, with
Stephen Peck. Peck. And he has Steve Berry mentioned Henry Posner. I know that Stephen Peck has worked with Henry Posner on some of his ventures down there in Central America. So he may have something to mention that ties in with that. And then, like we said, John Crisanti will give us a show in March.
Great upcoming.
Right. The meeting will be Monday night?
Monday night for the board meeting, yes. 6:30.
Yep. I'll send out an invite as soon as we're done with this. So, all right. Good night, all. Thank you. Thank you again.
Good night, all.